Hello and welcome to Itinerati Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 117. You'll notice a new webcam, huge improvements happening here in the studio. The topic today is the Agent Naming Service, or ANS protocol. Quick reminder to follow the live stream on LinkedIn. That helps us, really help support the live stream. Our guest today is Ken Wang, cybersecurity and AI expert, Springer book editor, Wiley author, prominent member of OWASP and the Cloud Security Alliances, many more accolades I can't mention. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Nice to be in your 107K, you said?
Yes.
Wow, a lot.
Yeah, twice a week. We do it twice a week. And we're committed to get to 200 and looking for new hosts. So if you want a side project, if you want yet another title, you could be a host. We're looking to literally pass the hat and find more hosts out there, and especially people who can talk about a lot of different topics like you. But before we dive into the topic today, I would love it if you could give us sort of a quick intro of your background.
So yeah, I actually started as the AI research a long time ago. It's in 1995. My first research paper was published. The title is Intelligent Tutoring System. It's published by Springer as well. Talking about we need to build a different model for to understanding the student. So you have a shallow model, which is more like the procedure knowledge, you do learning by doing. And then you have the deeper model is more conceptual. So that paper published 1995, long time ago. But then, of course, expert system, rule-based, all this Lisp Prolog, which I used never fly, right? So, but the Smalltalk object-oriented language that I use actually has a market. So I got a job doing the Smalltalk, which talked to the mainframe through IBM MQ to bring the COBOL layout, fixed layout, and change it to the object. And then we expose this through common gateway interface. That time there's no Java server page or ASP. And using the CGI gateway, we expose through the HTML, and we build the first landing pages on the internet. So it's for Bank of Montreal. So now bring back then.
That's going way back. That's the 90s, right?
Yeah, that was the 90s, 1998, 1999, yes. And then I basically we need to build this application. So the company was called American Management System, which is later merged by CGI. That's not Common Gateway Interface. It's called Conseiller Gestion Informatique. That's French name, but they headquartered in Montreal. It's a global consulting company for the management information system.
Right.
So one of the projects I'm doing was for Capital One. We are trying to build the next generation collection system. And one of my coworker, who is a really good QA, she actually go into our system and trying to do different testing. And she finds that you can actually put in some SQL code and get some result back. That's the early days called the SQL injection. That get me actually early involvement with the OWASP. So I was one of the early also on their ASVS side, right? That was early. Then I was busy, and I did different work for the government agency, especially the CMS. On their identity system. One of the identity system is called the NPAS, National Provider Enumeration System or something, right? It's the identity to manage the provider. So what get me interested back from the AI to object-oriented programming to web service to API back to the AI was really the GPT-2 and BERT, the transform architecture, get me interested. And then I started writing the book. During my first about AI book, the Beyond AI, it's also published by Springer. ChatGPT coming, so I kind of changed the name to Beyond AI and ChatGPT. so that's maybe bring back to now. It's agentic AI. I kind of realized that to fully leverage the model, you need the orchestration layer. You need the stack, so you can use in memory, you can function calling tool use, right? So that's bring me to write another book called the Agentic AI Series and Practice. Yeah, so I'm here. And also the agent naming service is some of idea is really during the writing of the book, I kind of thinking we need some plumbing, right? Yeah, it's a paper there working with OWASP and some of very talented researcher like Venice, Akram, Aiden. They co-author with me, as certainly they are very deep in the church as well. We also co-author many research paper, actually, at least I think 6 or 7 on the different aspect of agentic AI security foundations. Yeah.
Cool. Great intro. So let's actually dive into the topic a little bit. I'm actually going to show a quick diagram because this idea of an agent naming service that's sort of like DNS, it's sort of abstract. So I just want to try and get it a little more grounded. And I'm going to share. I took a picture from a screenshot from the white page that just shows, like, I guess what I would call a URI. And this, sort of shows that we have, if I think about an HTTP URI, I have the protocol or the scheme, HTTP or HTTPS : / and then I have the identifier, right? And here in this ANS name, we have a similar type of structure where we have a protocol, is this A to A or is this MCP ? / and then an identifier. A dot delimited identifier is what you're showing here, but I'm not sure if that's actually what you intend. So I guess my first question is what goes into an identifier? How do you decide what actually to put there? And how do you avoid collisions or name squattings? And what if different protocols have different naming conventions, how they want to name these things? So I guess my question is, what goes in this part after the //?
Yeah. So, okay, that's a very good question. I would say I want to give you the evolution of how this is coming, right? At the very beginning, we do need to think a registry, like when MCP coming, we think we need MCP registry. Then the A2A agent coming, we need to think this A2A, we need to find it. And then you have ACP, and in the Web3, also I sometimes still pay attention to the Web3 world. They have a lot of agent naming service protocol. So how all these agents, like how can we find in somewhere that they can talk with each other, right? Because A2A agent cannot directly talk with like ACP agent, right? From IBM, which is a behave protocol. So I started first writing this, and at the very beginning, I really focused on the A2A agent, like how MCP A2A can interoperate. Venice from Amazon, AWS, he thinks we need to go big. So that's his idea, right? I don't want to steal the credit from him. His idea is that we need to go big. We need to make sure that's protocol independent, not just A2A MCP. So start with A2A MCP. Now we completely say we need to support everything, right? And then his idea is we need the protocol adapter that you see. And then we need the prefix, like eventually you need to know which protocol you need to talk about, right? So you have a prefix, which is a protocol, can be A2A or MCP or ACP or agency or anything else. There's many, like at least 20 of all this protocol. And then you need to know what kind of naming. And the naming somehow should have including some of the capability so you can discover it. And then you need the version, like you may change, right? So you basically have to have the version. So this is his idea. So I don't want to, right? But then we discuss the detail, how we do it, how we implement it, and we have a prototype, like I have the video, the demo, like what we did. It's a fully functional prototype, and we can demonstrate it. So this is part one. Part two is all those people who work with me will also volunteer for OWASP, right? So OWASP has agent security initiative. They think that this is a good research paper, so they publish it. But we also have an archive paper. Yeah, so that's maybe if you need to drill down, that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I might dig a little bit deeper, but first I just want to mention that the paper that we're discussing today, the white paper called Agent Name Service ANS for Secure AI Agent Discovery version 1.0, that's on the episode wiki, of course. Every episode has a wiki page. That's the URL. And I will put also notes up, or any the diagrams that I'm showing. Those will all go up on the episode notes page. So the question, it sounds like to me that the name is actually, the identifiers are out of scope. Like you've used for test purposes, you've suggested a dotted notation, but actually the protocol doesn't specify what's in those identifiers. Is that correct?
So the first part is the protocol. The
Yeah.
second part is really the identifier.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah,
It
and I'm
has to
asking
be
about the
unique.
identifier. Yeah.
It has to be unique within this protocol naming space.
Yes.
So you can have a document translation, for example, in A2A, and the same name in the MCP. That's okay, right? So the protocol is a kind of your naming space. So you have unique identifier within this protocol, it's fine. But if you have both, the registry has to reject you, right? You can not, like we do show the example, like the MVP, our MVP, right? If we register the same identifier choice, it will just reject you.
But if you really want to say that this is like DNS doesn't just say it's a unique string. DNS has a dotted, structure in which it's right endian. So there's a sort of governance structure built into the naming structure. So DNS just doesn't say, you're going to use any unique string. DNS says we have dotted notation and you resolve reverse endian. And so it sounds like you haven't really gotten there, and that what you're saying is we're defining that you need to tell us what the scheme is, or what type of protocol we have, and then the identifier might be totally up to the MCP community, or the A2A community will decide what identifier. And as long as they don't register colliding identifiers, we're all good. Right?
Yeah,
But
so
you're not giving any guidance on what the structure
we
of that is.
do have a thing called a provider who provides this agent, right? And then we have protocol extension. so the SIM it solves the problem. Right. It's kind of like when you say fully qualified domain naming service, right? We do have this kind of concept. It's maybe not exactly what DNS doing. It's for us is really the protocol. Which protocol is it? Who provides the agent, and the provider is important, and what kind of capability or identifier to provide, and then protocol extension, then the version. That is in the naming, right? And then we use this name kind of as fully qualified agent, uh, right? Yeah. So if you look at this, like the A2A is a naming space for the
Right.
protocol, and then you have a
I'm just gonna
unique.
read it for the benefit of people who are listening to
Right.
this and can't see it. But the
Mhm.
URL is a2a:// text processor dot document translation dot acmecord dot v2.1 dot HIPAA.
Yeah.
And so if I'm looking at this like a DNS name, dot HIPAA would be the TLD.
No,
You know,
HIPAA is more like what kind of constraint in terms of security operation, right? If you have to have a security HIPAA compliance, PCI DSS, or some of the quality of service that we put there, right? And
yeah,
then within that, we actually have the protocol extension that is not showing here in the
right.
ANS name service, but it has to be resolved based on the A2A, right? A2A has A2A protocol extension.
What if it's just like MCP:// and then the public key of the agent? That would be unique. Um, and would that be okay?
That could be, but that's the idea of a naming service is really, yeah, I think it's open. Like if you have the public key, you certainly can guarantee, cryptographically guarantee the uniqueness and the name. It's the key thing is it's user friendly, kind of natural language style of the naming,
Hmm,
right? That
yeah,
also has its own kind of benefit. you
right.
know,
And that's a
so this way
very,
it's
very
sorry.
it's a very good point because the point of DNS was like where they were like, oh, people could never know we were like put in these numbers.
Right.
So we have to give them English. And
Yeah.
so the whole idea of DNS was to make the human friendly
Hmm.
identifier scheme that was resolvable to these unstable and really hard to remember numbers. Like I can
Yeah.
remember Amazon.com, or I can't remember 8.8.8.8. Um, so,
Yeah. So,
okay.
so Mike, what it actually to resolve is actually a URL which has metadata, and that metadata has a certificate.
Oh, well, you're
Right.
jumping ahead now, though,
Oh, sorry.
because I'm still on the identifier. But
Right.
let me go there and change the screen sharing. And let me share. Now, this diagram audience, I'm sorry, is kind of small, but we're
Hmm.
not going to. This will be on the wiki page, the episode wiki, if you want to see the details. It's in the white paper, of course. I'm just going to
Hmm.
call out a couple of sections. This is sort of the protocol flow chart. Um, and it starts with a request by an agent or a client, let's say, saying, I have a name, I need back the metadata. Um, but before we go there, in addition, one of the features that I think you're proposing that we don't see in DNS is that perhaps I could ask for a capability, not just a name. And maybe I want to say I don't know what agent I want. I want an agent that can parse PDFs for dates or something, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and so would you need to provide both a name and a capability, or could you just search for a capability? And does any I don't know of any equivalent type of capability search that exists in DNS, or any other internet protocol that I could think of, actually. Discovery tends to give you back metadata that includes all the capabilities you're allowed to see. But you can't really say, so I don't know. I'm curious about if you could dig a little bit more onto the capability features you're proposing.
Yeah. So the reason why we think DNS is not really sufficient, we need using the agent naming service is really the capability side. Right, the DNS does not know the capability. So the key thing is for agent is really it has the capability. We need to actually discover the naming with the capability. So that's maybe the key thing. And of course, this is the capability still is a high level. What we find actually after the agent naming service is published, we do get some kind of feedback back. Is actually one of feedback is from PwC, the PricewaterhouseCoopers. They said like, okay, it's good you're binding the capability. What if the capability changes? Or they give you good capability now and they give you some of bad capability, right? So we do need to make sure that capability has can be monitored and consistently. You have the binding protocol for that. That's the follow-up paper actually. It was published yesterday or the day before yesterday. I forgot. So it has a capability binding and a negotiation protocol. So the key idea of the agent naming service is you basically, based on the agent naming service, you find the return with the what we argue actually we should actually have a fuzzy matching of that to return a list of matching, and then you can negotiate like all this is in the cache, so you don't need to go to the registry again. You get a list of items, you find the one which is the best match because it's coming with the capability with QoS or like a HIPAA compliance or not, or even the cost, right? We do have the demo for that as well. And then once you select like one, you can do the banding. Banding means more like exchange of the kind of mutual TLS exchange, right? Then you can talk with each other. So that's maybe the high level. I do see that this is just the beginning there. The proposal, there's still a lot of things can be discussed. Like lots of, I certainly think this is a brainstorming session between Mike, you, and me. So it's really good.
Where I'm
Yeah.
hassling
So
you
we
about the
still have,
protocol, all the things I don't like about the protocol.
yeah.
Um,
So you have tons
so
of
I don't know.
knowledge.
You just brought in a complexity I hadn't really considered, which is what if I call it voice recognition, or I call it speech recognition, or language interpretation? All of these things might be the same. And then, of course, we have to bring in other languages. Actually, you're right. When you say if you're going to do a capability search, the registry, I guess, on the back end is going to have to do some type of matching to that to give you a response. It's a very interesting idea. Um, and just walking through the protocol a little bit. Okay, let's just say you make a request and you get a response, and then that response is returned from the registry, and your local ANS server verifies the data cryptographically, because I guess when the agent registered, it provided some public key,
Yeah.
and then somehow I guess there's a challenge response, and we're able to show that it's the same agent. But it's interesting that the ANS service verifies the response, not the actual client. And I'm curious why you feel that the ANS server is the right place to actually validate the metadata that comes back from the registry.
So I think it's go from first is in the registration process, right? When you register, there is a registration authority validate your capability, validate your naming certificate. I have actually a really good discussion with Certigo, who bought Entrust a few years ago. It's one of the bigger certificate authority, and I'm
Certificate
really
lifecycle company, I think, too. They
sorry.
do certificate life cycle,
Yeah,
issuance of certificates, revocation of certificates,
exactly.
rotation,
Yes.
and issuance, and also.
Yes, they maintain more culture of the what's called the CT or Certificate Transparency Law. They are one of the six, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, they are quite big, but they certainly are intrigued by what we propose. And one key thing we're talking about is the registration authority, how it validate. Once it's validated, it can issue a CSP on behalf of uh, the provider of agent to certificate authority. Then certificate authority basically issues a certificate, everything is good, right? And in terms of validation, is really for the provider, they have to have a trust store. They import the root certificate from CA, right? And they have to trust the root, and then they can do the what is called the validation, right? Validation is really to see this certificate validated. Um, so I don't know if does that make sense to you or no. It's more
Yeah,
like a
it
trust
raises
score.
more questions than it answers, but I
Okay.
guess let me dig in the next question I thought of just from that response, which is, do you see when you said that the registration authority is going to validate or let's say vet the capabilities of this agent? Um, would you see different registration authorities? Like how would if I'm running a registration authority? Maybe I'm an expert in MCP or I'm an expert in A2A,
Yeah.
and how I vet capabilities is different. So, do you see a distributed trust model where there's multiple registries?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, so I think what I think is a huge business opportunity. Like the traditional registry authorities, they can go into this business actually, right? Because they established. But you have new decentralized authority or registered authority spring up. They have the expertise, but how people can trust it, right? That's the issue. Like how can we the CA trust this registration authority. So there is a few different ways, right? One is really you have established the name, which like maybe if Google, Amazon, they want to go to this business, right? Certainly they can do both. They can be registration authority, they can be also certificate authority, right? Or Certigo kind of is trying to do this, right? Another one is more like from decentralized autonomous organization, more from, right? So for this actually to work, you do have a token economy. You have to a basically you have to stake the token to do the kind of right. If you are not like if you're lying or you not do your job, you get slashed. Means you have the penalty. Um, but this is more down the road. I think the initial one is really within the enterprise itself. If it's internal use of agent, you can actually have internal registration authority, which maybe you InfoSec team with the IT department would just do the testing and we're not publish it externally, then it's fine. But if you need to publish your agent to so other people can use it, then you have
Yeah,
to work with the named registration authority. So for the named, which is a trusted registration authority, which has a close business relationship with CA, uh, they can build a multiple agent system. First intake is their agent system can do some lots of validation for you initial. bootstrap for some value of agent, value target. Like if you just do web search with Brave API, that's not like so much transaction value involved, all right? But if you want to do the book, like a travel agency example, you need book a hotel or you need to go to buy the air ticket, then you need more. Then you have to have a human to really to evaluate the code
Mhm.
and then how it works in terms of capability, right? Then you have the more. So, but you can have a different level registration authority say, for the level one, I only charge you $10,000. Level two, 100. Level three, maybe a million. Like if it's a transaction of really big value, right? So this is a
So
different
your
level.
auditors, your KPMG would get
Yeah,
into a verification role and
yeah,
issue you claims about. Yeah,
right.
it seems very speculative to me.
It's
Um,
really,
you know,
yes,
I
I
I have to
agree.
ask you. I know you're a recovering blockchain enthusiast. I heard you mention tokens and staking.
Right.
Um, and is ANS a hierarchical directory service for AI agents? And do you really think building a big PKI for agents is the right move here? Is this with PKIs has trouble scaling? So I know that certificate issuers like GoDaddy might want to say, "Oh yeah, we issue web certificates. I'd love to issue web certificates for agents." But is that system really working, so well? And is that something that we really want to build? Do we really want to build a big hierarchical CA for web agents? Shouldn't we do something more decentralized?
Um, so I think in the paper we talk about three different ways of doing it. I don't think like we can just rely on one way, right? Which is a current PKI structure. That's still like if you GoDaddy or Certigo, all those Let's Encrypt, all this bigger CA, if they want to play in this space, that's good. Uh, I think that's why they are trying to talk to us. So, but this is not the only way. Especially like Web3, I wrote a book. Actually, my first book is blockchain security. I usually look at the new technology from security angle. So
Yeah.
I have one chapter about even the PQC, right? Post quantum cryptographic, right? What's the kind of uh, security implication of that? So I do have this book chapter in the one of the Spring book. So I have six Spring book now. That's right. Another book upcoming is really the agentic AI security that will coming
I think I saw you
early
holding
next
one of
year.
the galleys.
Sorry.
I think I saw you holding one of the galleys on LinkedIn. Um,
Right.
but yeah, and by the way, audience, all the books are linked on Ken's LinkedIn profile, which is on the episode wiki. So yeah, I'm also a Springer author, but I think that Springer is one of the better publishers for being agile enough to get a lot of new content out there fairly quickly. So kudos to them. But so let me drill down on this question a little bit more.
Right.
And, because we are talking about a hierarchical system, right? DNS is hierarchical,
Mm.
PKI is hierarchical. Um, and those hierarchical systems I think people have a buyer's remorse about some of these systems. There's been new types of approaches to namings like DIDs, decentralized identifiers.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, in this new market for this new type of thing, do we really want to build a hierarchical system? Is that the right way to go? And what are the advantages of a hierarchical system over a more decentralized system?
Right. So to be honest, I want to this like decentralized identity to thrive. Right. I'm part of the WC community, like it's called as a Credential Community Group (CCG) member. Uh, and also commented on some of the NIST framework for the identity. But this is hard really to bootstrap. There's a lot of people doing it, of course, right? And from what I see is hierarchical will still exist, will not really replace it. And then you have fully decentralized using DID, using verifiable credential of verifiable claims, using the zero knowledge proof, all this good stuff. And then you have federated. I would say maybe federated potentially could be a better approach for the agent space. Federated means you have the organizations, they partner with each other, right? Kind of like if you look at the WS Trust, right? That's the federation. So agent maybe has a sweet spot in the federated. It's in the middle, right? It's both kind of centralized and also decentralized. So it's in the middle of that. But all of those has a potential, I would say. Yeah, personally, Michael, you and me, we will not dictate the industry anyway. Right?
For sure.
Let it play out, I would say.
Yeah. So what I wonder is that once you say, oh, well, maybe the system can be federated, we have all of this work done already in the federation space around software identity. So in OAuth, we have clients. There's also SPIFFE identifiers. There's a new machine identity working group called WMSI, which is the workload identity management system. It's a new pattern that's already being extensively used in the industry for software identity. And once we do that, I think we start to wonder, okay, maybe that's the underpinning for the authentication identifier part. But you're still missing this piece that you're trying to build, which is discovery. How can I discover agents based on capabilities? OAuth certainly doesn't provide you any answers there, or OpenID for that matter. And even discovery, there are discovery mechanisms if you have a specific entity. If you have a server, there's a .well-known / whatever configuration endpoint that returns JSON. So we don't need DNS. Because if we know the host name of any of these sort of cloud servers, we can always get the metadata. And there's been a lot of progress actually on RP metadata because of the wallet space. So because of digital wallets needing identifiers and metadata, we also have more mechanisms for wallets to get an identifier and to provide metadata. So I think, this idea that we need some type of specialized discovery service for agents, I can get on board with that. But I really wonder if this protocol is addressing the really hard problems, which is about trust. So now that even saying we could assume all of this stuff, I'm not sure how you would govern this agent registry. Remember, there's been a lot of controversy over the years around ICANN, the Internet naming and addressing, I forget the exact what ICANN stands for. They're the ones who decide if there's going to be a new TLD, a new top-level domain. And if you have $100,000, they'll sell you one. If you want .ken, they'll sell it to you. But so these governance issues are really hard. What determines how an agent gets vetted? And also, in order for us to get trust in the claims, how do we actually? It's one thing for DNS to return a response, but we don't necessarily trust that response. One of the problems with DNS is that the hackers might break into DNS and they might return the wrong IP address. They might return
DNS poisoning.
Attack. And so it's when you're saying, okay, DNS is a relatively simple discovery service we give it a name, it gives us a number. But you're talking about building a richer discovery service with more JSON metadata returned. And what I see is like, how do we build sort of the trust in each one of those claims? And that really flows directly from the governance structure around this. And I wonder if, what would we even need to do to get there? But we seem just so far away from that.
Yeah, I think we're really, I agree. We're in the early stage. I think in terms of governance, especially for building the trust, yeah, I think the trust also somehow, like you alluded, is also related to security. Like if there's a scripting attack or poisoning attack, how can we, right? So we're using the MAESTRO threat modeling, trying to model the attack. So we do find all this possible attack, right? The MAESTRO threat modeling, look at the model level, like look at what kind of framework you build, and look at the registry itself. There's so many different attacks, and some will suggest the mitigation strategies. But even with a really very good mitigation strategy, you cannot 100% secure, right? Current internet is not 100% secure, but still lots of transactions happen, right? So even with the agent naming service, I think 100% secure, 100% trust is not achievable. But if we can build a robust enough and also scalable enough, that's why actually we are currently working with the MIT Media Lab. They have a project called NADA, NANDA, whatever name it is, but NANDA, by Professor Ramesh Raskin and his team. Their idea is good. They have a lightweight kind of registry and to do the naming lookup. Then you do a privacy preserving the naming lookup, and right. So you go kind of what do they call as a two-hop lookup. Of course, in order to make it scalable, you have to index the first layer and to make it fast, right? So there's lots of discussion, some of research paper coming. So the idea is now we really approach the problem from the academia, kind of academic way, trying to build some of foundation and some from protocol perspective, some really from the cryptographic perspective, and some from the security mitigation perspective. But eventually, we need a bootstrap. And actually, yesterday we do have a discussion in NADA's, they have the paper writing group, is like how we scale it, right? So the first approach is build some rigorous, solid academic foundation possible. Second is to see sometimes like if it's just paper, right? It will never scale and no one adopt it, then it's not good. So I think the NADA is doing a good job. They have they start with NADA chat. You can build your own agent. So what I did is I search Canwall AI in Perplexity. It's coming up with what I did, and I put into the NADA chat. It's called I forgot the URL. I can send it later.
We'll put it in the episode notes. It's fine. Yeah.
Right. And then you can build your own agent. That's you. And people can talk to you. So I do see people talk to me with their NADA chat, right? So this is maybe just a kind of like a front face, but behind the scenes, there's still certainly lots of work. Yeah, especially I think you really hit the nail on the head is trust. How can we build trust and how to make sure it's secure, right?
Right. Well, we're right at the end, so I'm going to just say the topics we didn't have time to get to, and I'm going to ask you for last thoughts. Revocation. I'll just say my recommendation on revocation. Look at OAuth status list, certificate revocation lists, OCSP. this is too inefficient and doesn't scale. OAuth status list is a much more efficient way to do revocation. Most of what people want to know is it revoked or not? And you don't need a huge metadata document in order to convey that information. You just need one bit on a JWT. And if you can reduce yourself to one bit, your CRL can get down to a much more manageable distribution size. So revocation is a big issue here. And if you're relying on certificate revocation, we already know that doesn't work. And I don't want to wish installing an OCSP server on anybody and explaining to them why it's HTTP. And then the last thing I was going to mention is you mentioned privacy, but also, so I might register my agent, but I might not want all of the data that I register to be public. And so I might want to do a selective disclosure based upon the trust level of the client that's querying the service. And so, what would be a formal, way that we could express the policies about selective disclosure in the registry, and how would we get audit logs for transparency, so that we can understand, how the data that we shared in the registration process is going to be used. Otherwise, the registration service becomes a honeypot of data for hackers as they're gathering information about your domain. And so there's a trade-off between privacy and security there, and how you're going to get interoperability, because you're talking about a third-party registry. I think that's going to be a big challenge too. So that's where I was going, but we ran out of time. I'll give you last thoughts.
Maybe very quick. We have NADA, NAD, and they have the reason is really for the privacy, right? They have the first level is just high level information, not really detailed. Then the privacy, but kind of for discovery thing, right? Using zero knowledge proof or homomorphic encryption as a real primitive is not defined yet, and we have the security blueprint paper is still under heavy review. Hopefully published sometime next month. Address this kind of issue. I can send you the link once it's done.
Yeah. So ANS is just one of many things you're working on, and I wanted to give you a chance to share any last thoughts on this topic, any other topics, or what you're doing, or places that you're speaking. So any last thoughts?
Yeah, so I think we're trying to follow NIST AI risk management framework. And one of the OWASP top 10 project called the AI vulnerability scoring system. Currently, we have many people involved from government agency, research organization, open source community, banks, pharmaceutical companies, AI companies like Anthropic, and security companies, a lot of them. And we trying to define the agentic AI top 10 list. And also, it's different from the other top list is we trying to give a scoring using the vulnerability scoring system. So that's is exciting, and we are not replacing the common vulnerability scoring system or CVSS. We extend it, and there is a kind of track record. Some people say it's not so good. Some people say it's really good for risk management. I think this is really a good factor for you to do the risk management, right? Perspective is we have the top 10, and then we can have a scoring system to say how to come about. So that's coming soon, and I recently have 3 books. I think it will be a small contribution to the community. One's Agentic AI series and the practice. I just received my copy today. Another is LLM design patterns by Packet. That was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's more looking at the full life cycle of how do you build a generative AI application, and also the agentic AI application, from data to model to the full stack, from prompt engineering, right, to different technique like chain of thought, chain of truth. So that is the second book. Third book is more from strategic perspective for CAIO. So that is quite a popular book. I see a lot of people bought it. So if you're interested, take a look. Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, this has been great. We could have a much longer discussion on this. I didn't know anything about ANS like before today, but it's been really interesting to learn about it. And I think it's I think some type of discovery service is needed here. And this is a first step. Sometimes
Yeah, I
providing the
think
activation
you
energy
think
is
really
really
deep
important.
into it. You think even the replication we have not think about, and your idea of using OAuth list instead of this OSCP replication list is
Yeah.
really good. Just one bit, I think we should think the next time, right?
Yeah,
So thank you
and
very
return
much.
a JWT.
Yeah,
Don't return just an unsigned response. Yeah, so
yeah.
but I wish you guys the best of luck. Unfortunately, I don't have so much time to participate in these efforts anymore. My day job keeps me pretty busy because I'm the founder and CEO of Glue, and I run this twice a week. But I'm happy to hassle you guys about the stuff, and it's really interesting learning about it. And I think this is an area which is really needed. So it's fascinating to see this fast innovation. I just want to quickly announce the next episode. Um, it should be a really good one. Simon Moffat, who's one of the well-known identity experts in our industry, he's written a new book. I've been trying to get him on the live stream for a year and a half, and he's promoting his book. So I finally convinced him to come on. He will be our guest next Tuesday. Next Thursday, I'm actually taking a rare vacation day. So please join us next Tuesday with Simon. With that, I'll say thank you, audience, and thank you, Ken, very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Mike, for this really insightful discussion. I certainly appreciate this brainstorming session. So thank